There are moments when silence speaks louder than gunfire, when one punch doesn't just bruise a face, it bruises a nation's soul. Today, on Unsung Valor Stories, we bring you a tale that will make your blood boil and your heart ache. An 85-year-old Marine veteran, a coward with a clenched fist, and the son who reminded a town what honor truly means. Before we begin, hit that like button if you believe respect should never be optional. Subscribe to Unsung Valor Stories for more true tales of forgotten heroes, quiet legends, and powerful comebacks. And in the comments, tell us, would you have stood up in that bar? Let's talk about it. Mel's Pit Stop used to be a haven for war veterans, a dusty roadside bar with an American flag barely hanging on outside, and a jukebox that still played Johnny Cash. But now, it was a place for noise, for cheap talk, and for people who had long forgotten the price of peace. At exactly 3 p.m., just like every Wednesday for the past 6 years, 85-year-old Hank Callahan walked through the creaky doors. His spine wasn't what it used to be, but his posture still carried dignity, like a man who had marched through war zones with fire in his chest and brothers at his side. He wore a neatly pressed denim shirt, old leather boots, and a faded black cap with USMC retired, stitched above a worn emblem. He didn't come for drinks, just a plain black coffee, same seat in the back, same silent nod to the bartender. For most patrons, he was just background noise. The quiet old man with weathered skin and tired eyes. No one knew. He used to own the place back in the 80s. No one cared that he'd spent 30 years in the Marines, leading platoons through hell on earth, while most of them couldn't even handle a bad day at work. That Wednesday, 3 bikers swaggered in, loud, reeking of cheap beer, with leather vests covered in fake military patches they bought online. One of them, a thick-necked brute with tribal tattoos and a permanent sneer, locked eyes with Hank. "Hey, look, it's Captain America's grandpa," he laughed. "Still think you're someone important, old man." Hank didn't respond. He never did with bullies. He just raised his coffee to his lips, unshaken. That silence, that composure, it enraged the biker. "I'm talking to you, Grandpa. You deaf? Or just senile?" Still nothing. The biker strode across the room, towered over Hank, and with one swipe, slapped the mug out of his hand. It shattered across the floor. Coffee splattered on Hank's jeans. The entire bar went dead quiet. No one stood up. No one said a word. And then the biker punched him. A right hook, brutal and fast. It cracked across Hank's face and sent him sideways off the stool, landing hard against the wooden floor. Gasps. The chair scraped back. Then, nothing. Not the bartender. Not the waitress. Not even the guy by the door pretending to be brave. They all just watched. And that was the real punch. Blood trickled from Hank's cheek as he slowly pushed himself upright. No panic. No rage. Just a quiet, almost mechanical movement as he reached into his jacket. Not for a gun. For a phone. He dialed one number. His hand trembled, but not from fear. Just age. "Son," he said calmly. "It's me. I need you to come." He didn't say what happened. He didn't have to. And somewhere, just a few miles away, a highly classified training session came to a sudden halt as a colonel's phone buzzed with a name that never called unless it was serious. What followed wouldn't just change the course of that evening. It would turn that cowardly punch into a town-wide reckoning. And it would remind everyone watching that some old lions still have teeth, and suns raised to tear through steel when the signal is given. Colonel Jacob Callahan was in the middle of a debrief with his Special Operations Unit when his encrypted phone lit up. It never rang, never buzzed, not unless it was from him. He saw the name, Dad, and his voice faltered mid-sentence. The room full of elite soldiers noticed immediately. Jacob was the kind of leader who never flinched, not even under fire. Without a word, he stepped out into the hallway, calm, controlled, then answered with the voice of a son raised by a warrior. Dad, I need you to come, the old voice said. No explanation, no panic, just those 5 words. Jacob didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Within minutes, a matte black Suburban roared out of Fort Griffin's southern gate, followed by 2 tactical support vehicles. No sirens, no weapons on display, just 7 men who moved like ghosts when necessary, and lions when provoked. Back at Mel's pit stop, Hank sat upright again at the bar, his cheek bruised, his jaw swollen. Blood had dried at the edge of his lip. The stool he had fallen from remained sideways on the floor, untouched. The bikers had gone back to their drinks, laughing louder than before, emboldened by the silence in the room. Guess the old man's got a panic button, one of them sneered. Maybe they'll roll him out in a wheelchair next time. No one laughed. Not really. But no one said anything either. The bartender kept wiping the same spot on the counter. The waitress peeked from the kitchen and vanished again. Outside, the sound of engines changed the atmosphere. Low, deep, coordinated. It wasn't thunder. It was a convoy. And when the vehicles screeched to a halt in unison, people turned their heads. The doors flew open, not like a Hollywood entrance, but with military precision. First out was Jacob Callahan, not in dress blues, not in armor, in fatigue pants, a fitted tactical shirt, boots laced with surgical care, and eyes that had stared down death and made it blink first. Behind him, 6 men followed, quiet, focused, civilian clothes but with posture that screamed combat ready. They moved with the controlled chaos of men who didn't need weapons to assert dominance. Inside the bar, the air turned dense. Jacob entered without a word. His father sat still. One nod was exchanged. That was all it took. Jacob turned his eyes on the bikers. Which one? Hank didn't point with drama. He just raised one finger toward the tattooed man, still smirking behind his beer. Jacob walked over, slow and deliberate. You're the one who hit my father? The biker leaned back with a sneer. You his lawyer or something? No, Jacob replied. I'm his legacy. The room held its breath. Jacob pulled a small black tablet from his chest pocket. One tap. Then he turned it toward the crowd. A grainy security cam clip began to play. Everyone in the bar saw it. The biker towering over Hank. The mug slapped away. The punch, the fall, clear, unprovoked, undeniable. The biker's smirk began to fade. You assaulted a decorated war hero in front of a room full of cowards, Jacob said coldly. That makes you a criminal. And them, complicit. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. All around the bar, his team took quiet positions. One by the entrance, one near the back, a pair by the restrooms. No weapons drawn, no threats issued, but their presence was more intimidating than any gun. The bar manager stammered, "Let's not escalate things." Jacob turned on him with the stare of a soldier who'd buried friends. You escalated the moment you watched my father bleed and poured another drink like nothing happened. The bar went still. The guilt thickened in the air. Then the front doors opened again. 2 sheriff cruisers rolled up. Jacob's second in command had already sent the footage ahead. The biker didn't say a word when they cuffed him. because for once in his life, he had to face something stronger than his fists: honor. And in that room, not one man lifted a finger to stop it, because Jacob Callahan hadn't come for vengeance. He'd come to restore a name they all tried to forget. The biker was led out in handcuffs, flanked by two deputies who barely needed to say a word. The weight of the silence inside Mel's pit stop did most of the work. No protests, no resistance. The man who threw a punch at an 85-year-old Marine was now hunched, small, dragging his feet through broken pride. Inside, no one had touched their drinks. Colonel Jacob Callahan turned back toward the room, eyes sweeping across the faces of the patrons. The bartender who wouldn't meet his gaze. The waitress who peeked from the kitchen and vanished again. The man near the jukebox who had muttered a laugh just 20 minutes ago. "All of you saw it," Jacob said, his voice steady but cutting. "All of you watched him hit an old man, a decorated Marine, and you did nothing." A few looked away. One man cleared his throat, as if trying to speak, but stopped himself. "My father led Marines through combat, so people like you could sit here, drink beer, and pretend you know what toughness is," Jacob continued. "But today, he didn't need a rescue. He needed someone, anyone, with a spine." He walked back to his father and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You good, old man?" Hank, bruised and sore, nodded slowly. "Took worse hits in Nam, but it wasn't the punch that stung." He looked around the bar. The faces, the shame, the silence. It was the part after. Jacob clenched his jaw, holding back the anger still burning in his chest. "We're not here to make a scene," he said louder now, turning back to the crowd. "But you just witnessed a lesson in what happens when decency dies in public." The bar manager stammered, "We didn't know what to do." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "It's not complicated. You stand up. You speak out. You stop pretending silence is neutral." Outside, deputies took statements. The video footage had already been sent to the district attorney's office. But something else was spreading even faster: the guilt. Hank stood, his ribs aching, but his back straight. "I came here every week not because I needed the coffee," he said. "I came because this place used to feel like home." His voice was gravel, but it cut deep. "I wore that uniform for 30 years, watched men bleed in the sand and rain for this country. And somehow this little bar full of Americans forgot how to respect what that meant." He paused, locking eyes with every face. This is not who we are." A man near the jukebox choked up. "I'm sorry, sir." Another added, "We failed you." Jacob stepped in, quieter now. "Don't apologize to us. Do better next time. That's how you honor men like him." The moment sank in, like a stone dropped into still water. 2 weeks later, Mel's pit stop didn't look the same. Gone were the tacky flags and fake memorabilia. In their place stood a glass case with a folded American flag, a black and white photo of Hank in uniform, and a plaque that read, "In honor of those who stood when others stayed seated. Sergeant First Class Hank Callahan, USMC, retired, defender of freedom, reminder of dignity." Veterans began meeting there regularly. Young men listened for the first time, really listened to stories about sacrifice, service, and silence that cost too much. High schools invited Hank to speak. He never sought fame, but when the spotlight found him, he used it not to shame, but to teach. One evening, as the sun sank low behind the hills, Jacob and Hank sat outside the bar, sipping lemonade and watching teenagers place American flags along Main Street for Memorial Day. You realize you started something, right? Jacob said. Hank chuckled. Number that biker did. I just reminded people who they were before they forgot. Then, as they stood to leave, something remarkable happened. Inside the bar, every single person rose to their feet. No clapping, no music, just quiet. Every hand placed over every heart. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't expected. It was earned. And as Hank paused at the door, mist in his eyes, he realized something. For the first time in a long, long while, respect had finally come home. Some men fight wars. Others fight to be remembered. Hank Callahan never asked for a medal. He asked for decency. And in the end, he got something rarer than applause. He got silence that meant something. At Unsung Valor Stories, we tell the tales that history forgets, but your heart never should. Subscribe, share, and join us next time as we uncover the quiet battles that changed everything.